Hey everybody, what's happening? Chris Fitzpatrick here once again from Chris Fitzpatrick Speaks with another video here for you, tackling this week the topic of empactive listening, a brand new term. I know it's brand new because I just came up with it a couple weeks ago, that I'm hoping to really put out there and help enhance our discussion about listening as a critical communication skill. So I really want to dive into this. This is not a mailbag question this week, but it is a topic that I get asked about quite a bit when I'm out on the speaking circuit. Before I jump into the topic today, into some of the specifics, I do want to remind you just to please hit that subscribe button and hit the bell as well, so that way you know about some of the new content that's posted to the channel. Feel free to share the channel with any of your friends or colleagues or other students who you think might benefit from this topic. I also want to mention that while some of our prior week's topics have really honed in on skills for college and university students, students in two-year schools, trade schools, today this topic is universally applicable. This can be used by students of all ages, by working professionals, by businesses, by organizations. This is a universal topic that we're going to tackle today, and when we discuss empactive listening and listening as a larger communication skill. So when I speak at colleges and universities, or when I speak at other organizations, corporations, or nonprofits, when I'm talking about the four types of communication, I will usually start by asking the audience what they think the four forms of communication are. And almost right off the bat, somebody will say verbal communication, which is probably, if we're playing Family Feud, the number one answer on the board. And we'll go into some of the details about what verbal communication is and what it really means, whether it's the word choice, the volume, the pitch, the variance, the speed, everything that goes into the words that we're actually saying. And within just a few seconds, somebody else will come up with nonverbal communication as the number two, and that would be next in the list. Nonverbal communication is everything that we do surrounding the words that we use, whether it's our eye contact, our attire, our smile, our hand gestures, things along those lines. And that's a whole other topic for another day. So again, hit the subscribe button so that way you know when the nonverbal communication topic comes up. Oftentimes, then, we'll get into written communication, which is a very fun topic. There's a lot of funny stories about written communication, usually about written communication gone wrong. But we'll talk about the etiquette surrounding emails, text messages, written documents. And then there's usually a long pause as the audience is trying to figure out what that fourth item is. And we'll hear a few answers that are usually subsets of nonverbal communication thrown out there. And if the audience doesn't get it, which is not uncommon, I will share an analogy from the world of American football. I'm a big American football fan, and I realize not every room that I speak to is as well versed in American football terminology as some others. But usually when I ask a group what they think the most important position is on an American football team, generally most of the room will understand that it's the quarterback. And in this analogy, we'll talk about the value of the quarterback and how a talented quarterback can throw a perfect ball at the right speed in the right place with the right arc and velocity to try and put their team in the best position to win. And then I'll often ask, what is the other position that is critical when the quarterback is throwing the ball in the air? And I say not including the offensive line, and no offense to the offensive linemen out there who are critical to protecting the quarterback, to making sure that they can deliver the ball. But for that person on the other end, I'll often ask, what happens when a quarterback throws the ball and nobody's there to catch it? Or the person who's supposed to catch the ball is underprepared, or just completely disinterested in actually catching the ball? Are any yards gained? Are any points being scored? And the crowd will say, no, of course not. You have to catch the ball that's being thrown. Well, such is the case in communication. Now, you could have the best quarterback in the world, the quarterback who throws the ball with speed, accuracy, necessary to deliver that package perfectly. But if the person intended to receive the ball doesn't do their job, that pass falls flat, or even worse, is intercepted by the other team, which means you have the worst possible outcome. Something you're trying to deliver is intercepted by an opponent. Well, in the case of a communication exchange, the receiver is the listener or the reader. And that brings us to the fourth and perhaps the most critical form of communication. That's listening. We may not think of it immediately because we equate communication to what we do outwardly. And what makes listening so unique and so critical is how we take it in. As has often been said, we have two ears and one mouth for a very good reason. And I don't think it's just symmetry and aesthetics. Experts on the topic of listening and communication have many different terms to describe listening techniques. Active listening is the one that I hear most often. Active listening requires a concentrated effort on the part of the listener or the reader to be entirely invested in the speaker or the writer. So what do we need to be an active listener? Well, first off, number one, we need to listen to understand and not just to hear. It is a completely different skill set to listen to understand the other person or the other party than it is just to hear what it is that they say. Number two is, if something is unclear, ask for clarification. Don't just allow yourself to not understand what the other person is saying. Really make sure that you seek to leave that exchange with as much comprehension as possible. If you understand and want to confirm your understanding while also demonstrating to the other party that you understand, paraphrase. Take a moment to repeat what the person said, what you took away from that information, and confirm that that was actually the case. Number four, don't wait for your chance to interrupt, and don't worry about when it will be your turn to speak. There's a terrific line in the movie Fight Club about this. It's a movie that I really enjoy, and there's just such a great nugget of wisdom in there when Edward Norton and Helena Bonham Carter are talking early. They say, when you're dying, people really take the time to listen to you instead of just, and then Helena Bonham Carter interrupts Ed Norton and says, waiting for their opportunity to speak. Let's not make it so that's the only time that we really actively listen to each other. Let's do it in every interaction that we have. Let's not just wait for our turn to speak or look for a little pause in the action for our chance to interrupt. If we're truly being active listeners, let's allow ourselves to fully get ourselves immersed in what the other person is saying rather than just how we want to respond. Utilize nonverbal listening techniques such as healthy eye contact. And by healthy eye contact, I mean you're not staring a hole in the other person, but you're maintaining eye contact that says, I'm with you and I'm listening and I'm paying attention. Maintain an attentive posture, which means your back is straight. You're looking at the other individual. You're trying to be on their level. You're not slouching. You're not fidgeting, and you're not looking around the room because you're really not interested in what it is that they have to say. Nod when you understand or when you empathize with what the other party is saying. And if you're watching this video and you understand that and you're nodding with me right now, thank you very much. I appreciate you. If you disagree with something the other party is saying, resist the urge to retreat into a defensive posture. Don't go into a posture where you're saying, well, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense, and I don't really appreciate that. Don't show the other person that you're all of a sudden defensive because you disagree with something. You're there to listen and to understand. You can still have your disagreement, but the moment you start to become defensive, you are less focused on what the other person has to say or what they mean, and you're more focused on how it makes you feel, and that's not the purpose of the active listener. Next up, don't check the time unless you honestly have someplace to be, at which time you should make sure the other party is aware that you might have a hard stop and you're not just looking for an exit strategy. And then if something does happen that requires your immediate attention, you get that emergency phone call or that text message, let the other party know and ask if you can pick up the topic as soon as you've attended to this other thing, because you really do value what it is that they are telling you. You're making it clear to them that you're not just bigger, better dealing them trying to get into a different situation. This is something that can't wait, and I really do want to continue this topic with you. Please don't be offended by the fact that I have to take care of this emergency, and that's perfectly okay. Now, this is not as easy as it sounds, especially in the modern world when we have no shortage of significant distractions. Our attention spans are shorter than they've ever been. There's a 24-hour news cycle and a constant stream of content on social media that has seen to all of that. Maybe the most important distillation in modern times of that fact came from America's teacher, and that is the great Mr. George Feeney from Boy Meets World, who at one time reminded Corey, Sean, and Topanga, as well as the rest of the world, when talking about the printing press. Gutenberg's generation thirsted for a new book every 6 months. Your generation gets a new web page every 6 seconds. Really powerful words from Mr. Feeney. If you have a chance to go back and watch that clip on YouTube, I highly recommend it. I was watching it earlier and I forgot how powerful that was to remember that context. Now, another form of listening, we have active listening. Another form of listening we're going to talk about is empathetic or empathic listening. Empathic listening requires all the same techniques of active listening, but with an additional focus on understanding the emotions of the other party, not just logic or fact. Instead of active listening to understand what is happening and why, empathic listening, we are focusing on how this makes the other party feel and why they feel that way. This is a major tenet of social awareness, which is one of the pillars of emotional intelligence. And it requires one of the most critical professional, personal, and leadership skills we can ever possess: empathy. Empathic listening obviously gets its term from empathy. Empathic listening is also a critical skill in the quest for allyship. And allyship is when we are seeking to support and empower those around us, especially those who come from historically marginalized groups, in order to succeed and to be heard and to be as appreciated as they possibly can be. Author and speaker Ray Arata speaks about empathic listening and empathy in his outstanding book, Showing Up, which I highly recommend for anybody who is seeking to be a better ally personally and professionally. And that piece about empathic listening is really very powerful. Now, a third form of listening is something referred to as impactful listening. Impactful listening is a less common term, but this is where the listener seeks to make a difference in some way, seeking action items, providing immediate feedback and coaching. It still requires many of the same techniques of an active or an empathic listening a technique, but with the additional focus of being asked to act on the information that is being provided. It's important to know whether the other party is seeking action from you. We can't always assume a mandate of action from the other party when we're listening to them, because it's entirely possible they may just want to be heard. They may want to vent. They may want to be understood. They want to be empathized with, but they don't require action from the other party. Just the opportunity to share what's on their mind, share what they're feeling emotionally, and maybe just hear some of their own thoughts so that way they can take the necessary action. But it is important to see is there some impact that you can make, and how can I ensure that in this exchange that we're having, that I am providing the greatest amount of value to you as a listener, because that really should be what your goal is. So on a recent flight to beautiful Buffalo, New York, I was visiting the University at Buffalo. While I was on the plane, I was comparing some of these different listening techniques, and I asked myself, are any of them mutually exclusive? Meaning, if you were to do one, active listening, empathic listening, impactful listening, does that preclude you from using any of the others? And after I thought about this, I realized, no, I don't think so. And as a matter of fact, the three of them all go together in a really easy to understand Venn diagram. And for those of you who know me, you know I'm a sucker for a really good Venn diagram. And it has given birth to this new terminology that I have called empactive listening. It is a portmanteau, a mashed together portmanteau. Alex Trebek, rest in peace. It is a portmanteau of empathic, active, and impactful. Empactive listening is the act of listening to another with a heightened and intentional focus on active listening, being in tune with both logic and emotion, and seeking a mutual goal with the other party as to how you can best support them. There are commitments to be made if you want to be an empactive listener. Commitment number one, you have to be present in the moment with the other party. That means being free of those distractions and allowing ourselves to be fully immersed in what the other individual is saying or writing. Acknowledging the feelings and emotions of the other party. Seeking actionable items to provide coaching or support. Being free from distractions. And last, and maybe most importantly, allowing ourselves to be aware of our own biases and not allowing those biases to influence how you listen to the other person. Everybody has biases. Nobody is bias free. Unconscious bias is a very real and powerful thing because we've all had experiences in our lives, good and bad. We have knowledge, we have influences, we have influencers that all seek to create this noise that will change or impact how it is that we take in information. If you're being an empactive listener, you're allowing yourself to be aware of your biases for the purpose of minimizing their effect on what you are listening to and how you are accepting that information. Empactive listening can empower us all to do our jobs better and to lessen the impact of confirmation biases or similarity biases. Similarity bias is also known as the like me bias, where you subconsciously say, I like what this person has to say better because they remind me of myself. Maybe we went to the same school. Maybe we have some of the same interests. And of course, confirmation bias is, oh, this person is saying something that I already feel to be true. Thus, I already like what they have to say better, and I'm going to be more receptive to what they have to say because it's in line with what I already believe. Empactive listening also equips us with the skills to free ourselves from a world of distractions and become more closely connected with our fellow human beings. It allows for safe cultures in which authenticity is celebrated and supported, and it helps lower barriers to drive creativity and innovation. And that's what makes us all more successful, whether it's personally or professionally. If we can feel safe, if we can feel a sense of overall sociological safety, then we're going to be our best selves and our most authentic selves, which really at the end of the day should be one of our goals. So that is empactive listening, and listening as part of the larger discussion of communication. So once again, thank you. I want to remind you just one more time, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll keep setting up videos like this. And if you have any questions that you want to ask that you want me to address in one of these videos, please send it my way. Definitely check me out on social media, not just on YouTube, but also on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or on Facebook, on Twitter. I'm on all of those platforms. When you subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell so that way you know when new content comes out. But above all else, as usual, thank you for spending time with me. I hope I've made an impact.